book review, The Hebrew Primer, Derech Binah by Ruby Strauss, Ahuva Schuller, and Lillian W Adler. And today I'm reviewing the Hebrew Primer, Derech Binah. Derech Binah means like the path or the way to understanding. And this was written by Ruby Strauss, Ahuva Schuller, and Lillian W Adler. It's published by Behrman House, so I imagine you can get it at their website. But I actually purchased it at Israel Bookshop. So this is a book for young Hebrew learners, and the intended audience is English-speaking children, not Israeli children and not children from any other language. All of the instructions are given in English, and there's just English all over the book. As for religious content, I'm going to give it a 90%. It's mostly about teaching the letters and teaching the kids how to read. But when it comes to actually reading words, there is a lot of religious content. There are blessings, there are prayers to be recited. It's definitely not for a family that's looking for secular materials. Alright, so the font is the typical kind of Times New Roman font. It's nice and big, perfect for young eyes. And there is no cursive, and it seems to be written in Ketiv Chaser. So that's the traditional spelling. That's what I would expect from a book like this. This is a children's learning book. It teaches them the very basics of reading. And the intended audience is English-speaking children who have a parent a parent or a teacher who can help them understand. There's not a lot of guidance as to how to pronounce everything correctly. Whatever child is using this book is definitely going to have a teacher or a parent who knows Hebrew. So whereas the kid is starting from scratch, the parent or the teacher definitely needs to know some Hebrew. The book basically teaches the basics of reading. It teaches all of the letters and the nikkud. And I think the goal is for the children to be able to pronounce prayers and blessings and stuff like that that are written in the Hebrew language. And of course, eventually, when any of these books has any kind of a religious aspect to it, I think the assumption is that the student is eventually going to continue their Hebrew learning so that they can read well enough to become a bar or bat mitzvah. So my son was 8 when we went through this book, and he already knew all of his block letters, all of the printed letters, and he knew how to write them in block style. But what happened was we got him into a class where the teacher, as soon as she realized that all of the students knew the letters already, she immediately got them started on learning cursive. So I did use it mostly for its purpose that it was intended of practicing reading and practicing saying everything correctly. But when it came to practicing writing the letters, this book has the students writing in block style. And as we can see, I had my son practicing the cursive style because that's what he was learning in his class. It doesn't go in alphabetical order. It, two schools of thought. Some of them will just go in strict alphabet order. Other books will teach according to a different order, and I'm sure they have their reasons for teaching the letters in a specific order. I'm sure it has to do with how common those letters are. know that they are often taught as separate letters to kids. That's how it was taught to me too. And then we have the vowel tsere. And then we can see that down below there are lines for the students to practice saying the letters and that vowel. But nowhere does it actually say what the letters sound like or what the vowel sounds like. This is completely dependent on the student having a teacher to explain it to them. And so here we have the next page, and we can see that there is some writing practice. And now, of course, this is geared towards complete beginning students, and that's why they're having them write in block letters. But like I said, my son was learning cursive at this point. He already knew how to write in block letters, and so I just wrote in the letter the way he was supposed to write it, and then he practiced a little. And you can see down below, they kind of give a little bit more practice for the students to write two of them together, write one with the dagesh, one without, and practice writing the vowels also. And then we can see on this third page, he's got a little bit of recognition practice. So bet and kaf are both letters that sometimes have a dagesh and sometimes don't. And they look really, really similar. In fact, sometimes you'll see people get tattoos and they've written the wrong letter there because the tattoo artist did not actually speak Hebrew, and neither did the tattooee. So those two letters really are hard to distinguish, and especially for young readers. So it's good that they start early saying, okay, be on the lookout. Which one is this letter that we're talking about, the bet and the vet? Okay, and then already on to the next lesson with dalet and resh. Now, dalet and resh are two completely separate letters. The only thing that they have in common is that they look similar. And so they put them together to help the students, recognize, hey, these are two different letters, and see the difference side by side. Here we are already at two new letters and a new vowel. Actually, two new vowels, but the two new vowels sound exactly alike. Here on this first page, they've got practice reading only their new letters and vowels. And on the following page, they've got practice reading the new letters and vowels, as well as the letters and vowels that they already knew, that they already learned. All right, and then again, we have some writing practice. And then here we have a little bit of a different exercise. The last one, you were choosing the two that were exactly the same. This time, they're all the same except for one. One is different, and so you have to cross out the one different one. And then here on this page, you can see they're giving the kids an opportunity to look at the letter and say which one it is. And then down below, they are to write the letter that they're being asked to write. Then on this next page, we've already got now 4 letters and 2 vowels. And those 2 vowels sound different, so the students are getting a little bit of practice with just the 4 letters and the 2 vowels. Practice saying all of these nonsense syllables correctly. Lots of different varied activities to get the students to recognize the letters and recognize and be able to distinguish one from another. Okay, and then on to another letter, or another 2 letters, and some more vowels. And so there's just all kinds of different activities for recognition of the letters, remembering the letter's name, and remembering the letter's sound. And there's a bunch of different ones, so it helps, it's not this activity again, right? It's not this same old. Yeah, they do a lot of varied activities for the letter recognition. So for me, I think that's great, especially for the little ones. Starting with lesson 5, they have a segment called Words to Read and Understand. And so now the students are reading actual Hebrew words that have an actual meaning. So page 38 and 39 were particularly fun. I wrote myself a little note about it. We talked about these number 3s over here. We talked about the colors of the different numbers because my son already knew his colors. He knew how to say lion. We talked about whether these other creatures over here were aliens or monsters. But you can also see that there are words here that relate to Jewish holidays. So again, it's not just about the blessings that they learn towards the end of the book. There is a lot of religion in here, and that's why I gave it such a high religious content rating, which is really typical, especially for children's books, books geared towards English-speaking children, because for the most part, parents who want their student to learn Hebrew, they're usually Jewish parents, and they're usually, gearing them up for getting ready for their bar mitzvah, and of course maybe they might want them to learn some secular stuff as well, but they're certainly never bothered by the religious content, or of course that's what the publishers of books like this think. Alright, so some things that I really particularly liked about the book was just how much emphasis they put on slowly building up the students' knowledge and ability to recognize the letters. And it was such a slow and steady build up. We've got just one letter, and then one letter, one vowel, and then one letter, one vowel, one more letter. It was a really slow build up because I couldn't find materials that I liked. I was just making my own, and when once I taught a couple of vowels, it was really, I thought my son, he'll understand what's going on here. And one thing he really struggled with was he would see like a bet and an vowel and then another bet, and I expected him to say bab, and he wouldn't. He would be like baba, and I would say no, not baba. It's just there's no vowel under here, so what is it? And he would be like ba, and I thought, oh, this is only, why is he struggling so much with this? And then when I found some materials that were actually intended for Israeli students, they actually spent a lot of time on the difference between a bet with a vowel and a bet alone. And I realized it's not just my son. Everybody, all Israeli kids, or maybe most Israeli kids, kind of struggle with that at the beginning. And so this book kind of does a really good job of helping them slowly grow into how to pronounce the letter and vowel combinations. Of course, it's got some great illustrations. If your kid knows a little more Hebrew than what is being taught, if they already know some words, you can maybe talk about what you see in the illustrations. And either way, even if you can't, illustrations always make it fun for a kid. That is what they are looking for, is something interesting to look at on the page. One thing that we didn't use at all, but that I can really see is valuable, is that they show the direction of how to write the strokes of each letter, the direction and the order of the strokes. And that is something that is really helpful to students when they're learning how to write, especially if they already know how to write in English. They might be a little bit, they might have that left to right mentality, and so they're not quite sure how to write these letters. And it's not a travesty if they don't write the letters the correct way. The finished product is just fine. So, but it does kind of break up the flow of the writing if you're kind of moving your hand around. So it's better for the kids if they learn how to write the letters the proper way. And so having the order and the direction of the strokes spelled out there with an arrow is really, really helpful. A couple of things that I didn't necessarily like so much about the book is the words to read and understand. So now these are actual words, but they give you the Hebrew word and then they give you the English translation, but there's no actual, it's really disjointed. There's no use of these words afterwards. They don't really seem to have much of a theme, right? They're not words that kind of fit together, like they're all weather words or they're all colors or something like that. Nothing like that. So, you kind of wonder just what is their purpose in trying to make kids learn the English meaning if you're never going to talk about this word again anywhere in the book. Anyway, so I remember that the book that I learned in Hebrew school when I was a kid, they gave us all kinds of words to read, and never taught us what they actually meant. And that was just fine. We read them, and they were all words that were part of blessings or words that we find in the Tanakh, stuff like that. But since they weren't actually teaching us any of that kind of stuff just yet, they knew that we were never going to remember what they meant, so they didn't even bother teaching them to us. And that was just fine. And I think this book should have done that also, because you look at these words, you find out what they mean, but they don't, then you don't ever use them. And so, of course, nobody's going to remember. Nobody reads a word once, never uses it again, and remembers what it means, right? You only remember what a word means through use and through repetition. Another thing that is a slight negative is that it's really dependent on a parent already knowing their letters and how to read and everything like that. So if you're a parent who doesn't speak Hebrew, or your Hebrew is not that great, you don't really read all that well, this might not be the book for you. And lastly, if you are a secular family that you really want secular materials, this is definitely not your book, because it very much has a lot of religious content in it. Alright, so that's it for the Hebrew primer, Derech Binah. I think it's an excellent book, especially if you're just getting them used to the letters. I used flashcards, and I really do like the flashcard method of teaching the letters. But if for whatever reason that doesn't work out for your kid, this is an excellent very first book to teaching them the letters. So the only thing is that you as an adult need to know the sound each letter makes. You maybe want to be familiar with the names of the vowels. I don't think they actually teach them in the book. They just show them, and then the kid has to start using them. Alright, so if you have any questions or feedback, please let me know in the comments. And hit like if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe and press the notification bell if you want to see more. See you next time.